right. Well, namaste to each and every one of you. I hope you guys are humbly blessed and walking in abundance. Abundance doesn't always infer the abundance of things, but it does infer the abundance of love and light inside of you. And we all go through bad things. We all have problems. We all go through situations in life. It's not if we do that, everyone does that. The question is how are we going to go through those things? And so I think that people, as they continue to grow and as they continue to see the light, little by little, does it mean that you will be angry? No. It brings us back to the thing that the Bible tells us, which is be angry. So actually, everyone who says anger, that we are to be angry, but to sin not. And there's a piece of that because your anger becomes shadow work if you don't acknowledge it. I am angry. The behavior of this person has affected me and I don't like it, but just because of that, I'm not going to do wrong. And that's a huge difference. That needs to be taught everywhere all the time because it would help us to go through, deal with the emotion and then release it. And so I hope if you're in this place, if you're anywhere here, if you are experiencing that, something has happened. People do all kinds of wrong things, and oftentimes we shake our head and go, I just can't imagine to what end is this behavior? And yet, folks, we live in a world where there is so many minds that are off balance, it's not even funny. I think personally this is one of the sickest times in the human history. And so I understand why we would also be having an enlightenment. And I also understand why the universe has told us that not all will be enlightened, which if you hear the prognosis of that, all of those who are not enlightened will remain sick and get worse. That's not supposed to make you happy. That's supposed to make you sad for what people are going to have to go through. But you also have to be conscious and understand that these things were choices. All of us have choices. I'm going to be mad and I'm going to do something bad, or I'm going to be mad, recognize it, embrace it, and then release it. And so we're choosing to release it. Just as we have to be plop, for those of you that remember that, we have to release. So blessings to each and every one of you. We love you guys. If you're following in the light, then you are just like we are. Are you imperfect? Absolutely, but you're perfectly imperfect. And so we're going to pick up on Helena's teaching. We're going through Isis Unveiled. I know this is a deep and it's a long journey. She was a phenomenal mind. But I want you guys to understand, none of this, all of these little pieces and trinkets and bits that you might get, some weeks you may go away and think, well, I really didn't get anything out of that. Just hold on, because you will find that the universe is planting seed in every one of us, which in time is going to bring an amazing crop. And when it does, you will be the one that is blessed. And so she writes, but for the fact that it enables us to estimate the intellectual grasp of the two schools of learning, what the German makes of profound psychological questions, we have seen. Compare it with the best that the astronomer Babinet and the chemist Bosengalt can offer by way of explaining an important spiritualistic phenomena. In 1854 and 55, these distinguished specialists presented to the Academy a memoir or a monograph whose evident object was to corroborate and at the same time make clear Dr. Chevreul's too complicated theory and explanation of the turning tables of the commission for the investigation of which he was a member. Here it is verbatim. As to the movements and oscillations alleged to happen with certain tables, you can have no cause other than the invisible and involuntary vibrations of the experimenter's muscular system. The extended contraction of the muscles manifested itself at such time by a series of vibrations and becoming thus a visible tremor which communicates to the object a circumrotary motion. This rotation is thus enabled to manifest itself with a considerable energy by a gradually quickening motion or by strong resistance whenever it is required to stop. Hence, the physical explanation of the phenomena becomes clear and does not offer the slightest difficulty. None whatever. This scientific hypothesis, or demonstration, shall we say, is as clear as one of Mr. Babinet's nebulae examined on a froggy night. And still, clear as it may be, it lacks an important feature. In other words, common sense. We are at a loss to decide whether or not Babinet accepts in Désespoir de Cause Hartmann's proposition that the visible effect of matter are nothing but the effects of a force, and that in order to form a clear conception of matter, one must first form one of force. The philosophy of the school of which belongs Hartmann, and which is partly accepted by several of the greatest German scientists, teaches that the problems of matter can only be resolved by that invisible force. Acquaintance with which Schopenhauer terms the magical knowledge and the magical effect or action of will. So how long have we seen? I know some of you may not have realized this, but our federal government is the largest occult training center that exists on the face of the earth. If any, and most people are blind and ignorant and have no clue that all of this has been going on. We've spent billions of dollars of our tax money, friends, to learn how to function in the magic realm. Whether you know it or not, it is true. One of the mainstays that they use right now is sight viewing. That means that somebody sits here and they can project their mind and can see. There's all kinds of murders that have been solved. People have seen bodies. There's a show that we're watching on TV called Medium. And the girl wakes up from a dream, and in a dream she sees pieces of something that happened at a different location. And you would be totally blown away if you don't know what I'm talking about and how accurate your mind really is. So what it really means is the people who have no understanding about what I'm talking about, your mind is just very, very, very immature and undeveloped. Okay, that's all it is. They kept you a baby. You can be 95 years old and die in the spirit realm as a 2-day-old baby. You never learned anything the whole time you lived here. On the other side, we are all blessed with the things inherently in us that are necessary for us to do, not only to grow, but to not only grow and blossom into this amazing human being, which we have no knowledge of. It's not that you were cheated. You weren't cheated. It exists inside of you. Now, might you be further away from it because you're not interested in spending any time? You would rather do other things than focus on your spiritual life? I looked at Dave the other day and I said, do any of these people understand that this is the most important thing that you will ever either deny or embrace in your whole life? Going to school was important. I mean, it's all of it, and none of it compares to this. And so I hope you guys won't get bored. It is lengthy and it's constant because it makes you use your mind. But if you're willing to use your will for your own benefit, there is great, massive gains that you can make, both in functioning and then as people begin to enlighten, which there are certainly people that are doing so. What you will begin to see is that we will begin to see enlightenment come in the spirit force terms that she's talking now. You have an intuition and it happens. I mean, I live this. I go through this all the time telling people that something's going to happen and 6 months later it happens. It wasn't that it's some great thing. It's that I have a connection that you can also have with a higher source than what ours is. And so some people often don't listen to me, and then it happens anyways. And, you know, if you're not careful, you end up at an argument about what is when you know fully what is, and they just want to argue. So we have to be very careful about those things and try to learn how to function, and that's a whole other story all by itself. And so the terms the magical knowledge and magical effect of the experimenter's muscular system which are by actions of matter, are influenced by a will within the experimenter or without. In the former case, Babinett makes of him an unconscious epileptic. The latter, as we will further see, he rejects altogether and attributes all intelligent answers of the tipping or rapping tables to unconscious ventriloquists. Now, she's talking about specific things that were going on, the way, understand, while I don't think we're in any way advanced of them. In fact, actually, I think we've devolved. But the reality of it is, friends, is there was a time in this earth when humans were starting to find out that the spirit realm was real. And that's why she is so relevant, because she was one of the forerunners to tell us that they're lying to you, they're lying to you, they're lying to you, they're lying to you. This realm that you've been told by Christianity to be scared of and run is a realm that's real, and it's readily available for us to access it. And so magic is not bad. Do people use powerful forces of the universe wrongly? Absolutely. But don't they do that in every area of life? Don't they do that in politics? Aren't there politicians that lie and cheat and steal? Of course there is. So you can't blame everything because there's bad people. There are bad people that make a decision to do wrong things. And so all of it gets summed up, and then, as science usually does, because they can't show you a picture of it, and if you're one of those people that don't believe until you see, well, you're never going to believe then, because the invisible and the supernatural is very seldom seen until it manifests, and you didn't see it bring it, you didn't see it go, you just saw that something happened. And that's where you have to walk by faith. And so, in the former case, Babinett makes of him an unconscious epileptic. So this person who's sitting here goes into a trance, has an active will, causes something to happen, causes things to move, causes patterns, causes objects to move, and he goes, well, they're just having an epileptic fit. And unfortunately, in situations like this, because many times it's notable scholars who are the ones, a lot of the people that I've met about Christianity that have heard some of what I'm saying from having been a pastor, a lot of people say, well, that guy's got a college degree, and surely he wouldn't lie to me. And you know what? The sad fact is a college degree does not make you smart, first off. It certainly doesn't make you spiritual. In fact, if anything, it kills the spirituality in you. And thirdly, this, my friend, who cares? Some college said that you were somebody who had value, but you can see what he can't. I'm going to tell you this. Trust your intuition. Intuition is by virtue your higher self giving you knowledge that you otherwise would not possess. It's in you. It came from in you. It's so wonderful, because I'm starting to see more than ever, this crap doesn't come from some spirit out here. It doesn't come from some Archangel Michael brought some wisdom to you. It is a opening and an unveiling from inside of you, which is intuition. And so as you begin to slowly but surely do more and more, you will begin to recognize, as you can begin to put belief and faith into your higher consciousness. I had something go on today, and I was walking, and a situation occurred, and immediately my mind went to this. So it is a slow change, but it is a change. And my mind immediately went, that's not what my higher self says, and I'm going to follow my higher self. And boom, the minute that I made that decision, everything ceased. I'm not listening to that. I'm not going that direction. I'm not going to act like that. It was actually a thought I had about something that I saw. And there was a thought that came, boom, it wanted me to grab it. And then there was another thought, which was, that's not you. And so I'm walking, and I say to myself, and it was wonderful and peaceful and beautiful and lovely and kind. And I said to myself, you are as pretty as your higher self is. You have changed, and you are seeing things that you never saw before. And I have to be honest with you, nothing can move you like recognizing the good in yourself. You know how long we've spent recognizing the bad in ourselves? Has anybody besides me ever really struggled with who you are and why the hell you're even here? Do you even deserve to be alive? I think all of us do. I think if we really knew the honesty of how much death we've lived, I think our worlds might change. I know it is starting to change for me. It's not because anything's better. I look at my bank account and sometimes it's worse than it was. But I have peace that I never had. So I'll take the peace and deal with the other because it's just material. And we will win. I am here today to tell you, if you will follow and if you will grab and accept the realities that Source is bringing to us, it is a guaranteed win. But you have to choose it. You can choose to not. There's no universal law that says, no, you can't choose the wrong decision. That is the one thing that we as humans possess that other spirit beings don't. Okay? We're not slaves. We were created from the beginning to be a slave species, friends. And wonderful Sophia Pistis, wisdom, screwed that up when she threw her spark of humanity and her divineness into humans. And the battle's been ever since. And so we know that every exertion of will results in force. Now, I want you to just dare to think good about yourself. Okay? I want us to just, if you would with me, just close your eyes, take a split second, close your eyes and take a really big breath and hold it for just a second. And then blow it out. And I want you to just for a second dare to believe, friends, that you really are and can be this thing that I'm constantly talking about as a higher self. What if you really aren't a mess up or a mistake? I don't care if your mom and dad did things wrong. You had no control over that. I don't care if your school teacher told you a bunch of lies and you've been living with it your whole life. I don't care about those things. Because what I'm telling you is true higher self consciousness destroys those things. Yes, they have been real. Yes, they have affected you. No, they don't have to be more powerful than you are. That's why the Bible tells us that we are the head and not the tail. Did you notice it didn't say if you fix yourself and if you change yourself and if you do all these things, then you'll be the head and not the tail? He didn't say that. The scriptures tell us we are already that. Dig that. I'm going to say that again. Grab the amazingness. You are already the light that shines in divinity. You are already the head and not the tail. If you choose to continue to function in the realm of a tail, you will be. But it can never supersede the greatness that is in you. It only causes you to forget that you are that greatness. That's all that it took. If you tell children they're worthless long enough, they begin to believe that they're worthless. But just because they believed it does not mean that it's true. We can, maybe on some levels, can grab that, but it's exactly the same thing. You've been told that you need salvation, that you're going to die and go to hell, and that you're a bad person, and you need to fix things. And if you haven't been told that, then you probably ended up being one of the ones who were telling other people that, and that's just as bad. I've been that. I've been both of those. Maybe all of us are most of the time. But the reality is I don't have to stay there now that I'm learning. And so we know that every exertion of will results in force. Do you understand will comes from out of the inside of you? Did you hear what she just said? That will equates to power. That's why people sometimes will themselves into such bad situations, because your will has power. You notice it didn't say a word about whether it's benign or malevolent or benevolent. That didn't even fit into that statement, did it? It only says that every act of will has force. Every act of will has power. How you direct that will determines what the outcome is. So we can learn how to direct those things in the positive way. And I hope that you will. I hope that you're hearing. I hope your heart cries out like mine does. God, please help me. Please help me to become that which I am. I already am it, but I haven't yet totally learned how to function in it. I have many shortcomings yet. And that according to the above-named German school, the manifestations of atomic forces are individual actions of will, resulting in the subconscious rushing of atoms into the concrete image already subjectively created by will. Democritus taught, after his instructor Leucippus, that the first principles of all things contained in the universe were atoms and a vacuum. In its Kabbalistic sense, the vacuum means, in this instant, the latent deity or latent force. So the divine spark in you, which is laying still. Did you dig that? The divine force that is in you, which you are, but it's unnoticed because you don't remember that you possess it. It's like having $1 in your pocket, or maybe you hit $100 bill and you come up and you don't have any money and you need some money, and something happens and finally you do what? You remember the riches that you possess. That's exactly what we're doing, friends. We're just simply opening in our eyes and little by little opening our hearts and little by little opening our minds to the riches which already exist in us. And you all have it. Nobody is exempt from this. That's what I love about the universe. We've been told there were those, and so please, there are people that are chosen for specific purposes, and you can't feel my purpose. It don't matter how bad you try. You can't feel my purpose. And so in that sense, maybe you can use the term the chosen, because in that sense, everyone is chosen for some purpose. And so you just might not have been chosen for my purpose, and me not chosen for your purpose. I can't be your mother in this incarnation. I wasn't chosen for that purpose. And so in its Kabbalistic sense, the vacuum means, in this instant, the latent deity or the latent force, which at its first manifestation became will. So every time you exert your will, whether you realize it or not, friend, you are awakening the latent force, or the force of power inside of you, which is quiet. And your mind says, will, I want this, I will have this. And guess what? Poof, force begins to happen. That's why you hear words like you create your own reality. The minute that you put your will to something, friends, I'm just telling you, I can say this a million times and it probably still won't hit any of you like I would love for it to. But until you begin to value yourself for the greatness that you are, you're never going to experience all that Source has for us. But it is in you, irregardless of whether you ever recognize it or not. And so, in the Kabbalistic sense, the vacuum means in this instant the latent deity or latent force, which at its first manifestation became will, and thus communicated the first impulse to these atoms, whose agglomeration is matter. This vacuum was but another name for chaos, and as unsatisfactory one, according to the Peripatetics, nature absorbs a vacuum. That first, Democritus, the ancients were familiar with the idea of the indestructibility of matter is proved by their allegories and numerous other facts. Movers give a definition of the Phoenician idea of the ideal sunlight as a spiritual influence issuing from the highest God. Dig that. The ideal sunlight as a spiritual influence. Now, do you understand why they had to make Ra, the sun god, such a bad thing? because there's actually a greater metaphor, which I just explained to you what that greater metaphor of the God in Egypt, who was Ra, who was the sun god, and he was actually the moving forth power of you, and my God, they couldn't let that get out. And so, the light conceivable only by the intellect. Well, do you understand when Paul Harvey talked about the dumbing of America? Do you understand why they've been actively promoting reduction in intelligence? Because they knew at some point if these people continue to progress, they're going to find out. And if they find out, it's over for us. Nobody will walk into a Christian church when people begin to wake up. You will watch congregations plummet from thousands to tens. Kenneth Copeland will show up and be in bankruptcy and lose his airplanes because nobody believes his crap anymore. Okay? You don't think that this is coming, but I'm telling you that it is coming. That is going to happen. So the light conceivable only by intellect. Why is consciousness? Consciousness has the concept of being awake, alert. It doesn't have the concept of being asleep or unalert. And intellect goes with consciousness. If you are conscious, you become more intelligent. That's why they don't want you conscious or intelligent, because you're a threat to them. And so the physical and spiritual principle of all things, out of which the soul emanates. So, see, you think that we're talking about this one thing, and then you find out that none of this realm can exist. None of the things that are on earth could exist without the spirit will inside of us that creates things. And that may be hard for some of you to get a hold of. Sometimes it is. I ask myself, man, I don't think, Lord, that I've created this. Whatever's going on in my situation right now, it's hard for me to believe that I intentionally did this to myself. Maybe some of you have experienced the same. And then, of course, I get out of that fit of stupidity and I kind of have to slap myself inside of the head and go, well, of course you obviously did. You did it with your thoughts. And so that's not to beat us up. In fact, I promise you that the more you learn how not to beat yourself up, the greater, faster, quicker, and more wonderful your life is going to be. Because I don't care what it looks like. I don't care what you're going through today, friends. It is a zippity-doo-dah day. I sat in a stand, didn't kill a deer. It's the first time in 30 years I haven't shot a deer. I hunted 9 days and never shot a deer. And you know what? I was happier today than I've ever been. It doesn't have anything to do with those things. Source will bring me an amazing animal when it's time. But whether that comes or whether that didn't, I'm a whole lot more interested in what happens in here than what happens out there. That's quite a paradigm shift for me. And so, while the primitive matter emanates, it was the male essence or wisdom, while the primitive matter or chaos was the female. Now, you can see clearly how well that fits the manifested reality. Right? People say it all the time. Well, it seems like them women have lost their minds, and yet their brothers are like these sane guys that are growing up. Ladies, please don't get offended at me. I didn't say it. I just read it. Thus, the two first principles, co-eternal and infinite. Co-eternal and infinite. Where already with the primitive Phoenicians, spirit and matter. Therefore, the theory is as old as the world. For Democritus was not the first philosopher who taught it, and intuition existed in man before the ultimate development of his reason. Think about that. Some of you, have you been more and more practicing your intuition? Because I recognized the situation that I was in, and something was said, and I said, I'm not sure that I believe that. Something tells me that that's sour. Something tells me that that's not really. That wasn't my intuition. So maybe that's always happened, and maybe it's always happened to all of us, but we didn't have the ability to be able to discern. And I think what you're going to, I would fully recognize for all of you who are choosing to walk on the path, you will begin to watch these things increase. And some of it's going to increase simply because you're becoming conscious of it. It's always been there for you to use, but instead, when your intuition said don't do it, you didn't listen and you did it anyways. And so all we're watching is, it's not really that, I don't think that we're having more intuition. I think that we're starting to learn and recognize what the intuition is and then how to use it. So you would need some failures before you come to consciousness about that. Wow, I just had a thought and I didn't do the thought and things went bad. And so as you go on, then you go through enough of those situations, you start beginning to be able to read them. So we really are in school. Life is school. And so intuition existed in man before the ultimate development of his reason. So in other words, he had higher self said don't do that before he could make a reason as to why he shouldn't do that. So you can think, if you think back to the Neanderthals, we think the American Indians are old, and yet now they know that Neanderthals existed, a whole species of humans existed for 300,000 years. Try to wrap your head around that. I've been 2.5 months and I still can't. But it is in the denial of the boundless and endless entity, possessor of that invisible will, which we, for lack of better terms, call God. Okay? I want to give you a little insight into another little Bible scripture, because as I grow and learn, these Bible scriptures just keep coming. Does anybody remember the scripture that says that only a fool says in his heart there is no God? Do you know that has been manipulated into Yahweh and that has been manipulated into Christianity? But that's not really the meaning of it at all. Only a fool says that there's nothing inside of me that is higher. That's what that really means. So if you say, well, I don't know, you want to see a God out here. Why? Because they took you from inside, they got you to focus on the outside. So how much so? So instead of going and sitting with your legs crossed, or sitting on a bed in peace, or sitting up against a pillar, or sitting in a chair, instead of you sitting there and looking inwardly and praying to the higher self, conversing with your higher self, instead you go to a church and you get down on your knees, or you sit on the pew, or whatever you do, and you recite incantations and you cast your voice out here. You'll never find this as long as you're looking here. God in the manner of Christianity does not exist. But that doesn't in any way mean there is no higher power. There is, and it's you, and it's inside of you. That's how it works. You can like it or not, but that's the truth. So, when we quit playing their stupid games, we start moving towards positive things. So he says, it is in the, which will we, for lack of better term, call God. That lies the powerlessness of every materialistic science to explain the occult phenomena. It is in the rejection a priori of everything which might force them to cross the boundary of exact science and step into the domain of psychological, or if we prefer, metaphysical physiology, that we find the secret cause of their discomfiture by the manifestations and their absurd theories to account for them. Okay? The ancient philosophy affirmed that it is in consequence of the manifestation of that will, termed by Plato the divine idea. So that's why you hear a thing if you were younger or whatever and you were into music and you see these songs that have really profound lyrics and you wonder where that person will say such archaic things like, I can't tell you how many top 1 songs that have moved people, and the writer of those songs said, yeah, I penned that in 2 minutes. You know why? Because for whatever brief moment that was, they connected with their higher self, and it wasn't difficult for the higher self to write profound words. They didn't do it in the physical sense. They did it in the spirit sense. And that's why many people write songs that don't touch people. And so it is in the rejection or priory of everything that might force them to cross the boundary of exact science and step into the domain of psychology, or if we prefer, metaphysical physiology, that we find the secret cause of their discomfiture by the manifestations and their absurd theories to account for them. The ancient philosophy affirmed that it is in consequence of the manifestation of that will, termed by Plato the divine idea, that everything visible and invisible sprung into existence. Please grab a hold of that. The divine idea. As that intelligent idea which by directing its sole willpower towards a center of localized forces called objective forms into being, so can man. I'm telling you guys, if your motor's not getting revved up for maybe being a sect of people who get to live on this earth and may actually get to manifest and realize the fulfillment of Yeshua, the Nazarene's words, when he says that these things that I do and greater than these will you do, because I go to the Father. That wasn't him going to the Father for you. That was him going to the Father inside of himself. And if you follow the Christ as he is, so are we. If he had to go to the Father, the higher self, the divine essence, if he had to do that, and if you were a good student and you listened and you had a clean and a pure heart, then that would have led you to that understanding that he's saying for you to do these things, you must go to the Father. Oh, and by the way, in case I forgot to tell you, the Father is you. It makes some people scratch their heads. It's becoming very much easier for me to put pieces together, I notice. And I hope it will be for you too. As God creates, Give me a second, I lost myself. A figure of speech employed by Democritus and gratefully seized upon by the materialists are like automatic workmen moved inwardly by the influx of that universal will directed upon them, and which manifesting itself as force sets them into activity. That's how we create. The plan of the structure to be erected is the brain of the architect and reflects his will. Abstract as yet, from the instant of the conception, it becomes concrete through these atoms which follow faithfully every line, point, and figure traced in the imagination of the divine geometer. As God creates, so man can create. Given a certain intensity of will, and the shapes created by the mind become subjective. Hallucinations they are called, although to their creator they are real, as any visible objective is to anyone else. Given a more intense and intelligent concentration of this will, the form becomes concrete, visible, objective. The man has learned the secret of secrets. He is a magician. You can also say there, he is the God. That might seem really weird to you. Some of you may even feel sacrilegious because of all the brainwashing and programming. Friend, they'll keep you there if you'll let them. The archons are not going to let go of you easily. I'm just telling you. This is going to be, you want to know why you can't change? Because you haven't instituted your will yet. The minute you will to change and be different, the minute that I willed to become peace, love, and light, I became peace, love, and light. The minute that I did that. Did it take a while for that to manifest? It's an ongoing process, but it was done the minute that I accepted it. I am peace, love, and light. I don't need anybody to confirm that for me. I'm well aware that that is true. But it also doesn't mean I'm not human. And so, the materialist should not object to this logic, for he regards thought as matter, conceding it to be so. The cunning mechanism contrived by the inventor, the fairy scenes born in the poet's brain, the gorgeous painting limed by the artist's fancy, the peerless statue chiseled in ether by the sculptor, the palaces and castles built in air by the architect. All of these, though invisible and subjective, must exist, for they are matter shaped and molded. We shall say then that there are not some men of such imperial will as to be able to drag these air-drawn fancies into view, enveloped in the hard casing of gross substance to make them tangible. If the French scientists reaped no laurels in the new field of investigation, what more was done in England until the day when Mr. Crookes offered himself in atonement for the sins of the learned body? Why, Mr. Faraday, who is also the guy who developed the Faraday cage, some 20 years ago, actually condescended to be spoken to once or twice upon the subject. Faraday, whose name is pronounced by the anti-spiritualist in every discussion upon the phenomena, or a sort of scientific charm against the evil eye of spiritualism. Faraday, who blushed for having published his researches upon such a degrading belief, is now proved on good authority to have never sat at a tipping table himself at all. We have but to open a few stray numbers of the Journal des Débats, published while a noted Scotch medium was in England, to recall the past events in all their primitive freshness. In one of those numbers, Dr. Foucault of Paris comes out as a champion for the eminent English experimenter. "Pray, do not imagine," says he. You see how ingrained it is? "Pray, do not imagine that the grand physicist has ever himself condensed so far as to sit prosaically at the jumping table. Whence then came the blushes which sufficed the cheeks of the father of experimental philosophy. Remembering this fact, we will now examine the nature of Faraday's beautiful indicator, the extraordinary medium catcher invented by him for the detection of mediumistic fraud. That complicated machine, the memory of which haunts like a nightmare the dreams of dishonest mediums, is carefully described in the Comte de Merville's Question des Spirits. The better to prove to the experimenters the reality of their own impulse, Professor Faraday placed several cardboard discs united to each other and stuck to the table to a half soft glue, which, making the whole adhere for a time together, would nevertheless yield to a continuous pressure. Now, the table having turned, yes, actually having dared to turn before Mr. Faraday, which fact is of some value at least, the discs were examined, and as they were found to have gradually displaced themselves by slipping in the same direction as the table, it thus became an unquestionable proof that the experimenters had pushed the tables themselves. Another of the so-called scientific tests, so useful in a phenomenon alleged to be either spiritual or psychical, consisted of a small instrument which immediately warned the witnesses of the slightest personal impulses on their part, or rather, according to Mr. Faraday's own expression, it warned them when they changed from the passive to the active state. This needle which betrayed the active motion proved but one thing: the action of a force which either emanated from the sitters or controlled them. And who has ever said that there is no such force? Everyone admits so much, whether this force passes through the operator, as it is generally shown, or acts independently of him, as is so often the case. The whole mystery consisted in the proportion of the force employed by the operators, who pushed because they were forced to push and were with certain effects of rotation, or rather one imagined that the Lilliputian experiments of that kind could have any value to this newly discovered land of giants. And I'll stop right there. I have to say this to you guys. I'm really so thankful that Source has been giving kindness I for many years, and some of you who know me know I've been saying this, I've always questioned why we've never seen. We've seen lots of fakes, we've seen lots of charlatans, but I've always wondered why we never saw the things that Yeshua told us that we should be exhibiting. Just so you understand this, the statement that's made in the New Testament that if you're not manifesting power, it's proof that you do not know the truth. Do you know that you don't know anybody and have never known anybody in your whole life who knows the truth? Not one person. I've been in church and I have watched charlatans by the thousands come and lie to people with no power. It's not something that we're supposed to be living out of. It's actually when the supernatural becomes natural. It's when it ceases to be super because now it has become the norm in your life. And so I hope you guys will understand, if you're an old school Pentecostal, you've been craving your whole life to watch somebody actually do the do. And I want you to get this today. You have the option. We all have the option together to learn how to do the do. We all have the option together to learn how to function in a realm that we've been told existed but never got a chance to experience. And so I hope you guys will take that, because it's really funny to me how much Source is bringing out. And it's becoming easier and easier and easier to see the deception where they just twisted words and did a little bit. But what these ancient people we call the ones, Yeshua and John, constantly talking about the supernatural, and yet we see none of it. We see none of it. I have watched a lot of supernatural in church, but I'm going to tell you right now, it wasn't positive spirit activity. I watched lots of bad spirit activity. And I have some people that have been there and seen the same things I have. They're still existing. In some ways, they're still affecting our life. Even though the timelines have shifted, they're still playing their same badness. Why? Because they haven't changed, and they never will. They are doomed, friends. So, blessings to each and every one of you. I want us to be powerful and strong, full of love, full of light. You know what? Things are starting to pass away and new things are starting to grow. I believe Source is trimming off the dead limbs. And yeah, it's a painful, long journey. But don't you worry for a second. Those dead limbs will get cut off and they will be thrown out of your timeline, and you will go forward. And you will be better off for it. It just hurts when they're cut off. And so I hope you guys will recognize that. I hope you guys will practice breath work. I hope you guys will maybe spend a little time in meditation and quietness. If you don't do anything but just sit and be still, there is much power inside of us. Shalom to each and every one of you. Peace, 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 said he, that we can learn how to have peace like a river flows. I don't know about you. That hasn't been my life up until this point, but I will tell you that is who I am. And I hope you begin to believe that for yourself. Shalom and namaste. We love you guys. We'll be back on Saturday. I hope you'll be blessed.